Lena's breath came in sharp, ragged gasps as her shoes slapped against the rain-slick pavement. The alley was narrow, suffocating, and the neon lights from the street behind her barely reached this far into the darkness. She didn't know why she was running, only that every instinct in her body screamed at her to move, to get away, to forget what she'd seen. The gunshot still echoed in her ears. Behind her, footsteps, steady, unhurried, as if whoever was following knew she had nowhere to go. She turned a corner, her heart hammering so hard it hurt, and slammed directly into something solid. A chest. A man. Strong hands caught her shoulders before she could fall, and when she looked up, her terror froze into something else entirely. Dark eyes, sharp jawline, a face so calm it was almost unnerving, framed by black hair that fell just slightly over his forehead. He wore an expensive black coat, tailored perfectly, and he looked at her the way someone might look at a wounded bird, curious, assessing, and far too knowing. "You're running," he said softly, his voice smooth and low, with a Korean accent that wrapped around each word like silk. "From what?" Lena tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, not painfully, but firm enough to keep her still. "Let me go," she gasped, her voice breaking. "I will," he promised, and there was something almost gentle in the way he said it. "But first, tell me, what did you see?" Her blood turned to ice. How did he know? Before we dive in, if you love intense romantic dramas with twists you never see coming, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, this story is about to take you on a ride you won't forget. Now, let's get into it. Lena had been in Seoul for 2 years, and she'd learned quickly that survival meant keeping your head down and your mouth shut. She worked double shifts at a small restaurant in Itaewon, the kind of place where expats and locals mixed, where the owner paid in cash and didn't ask too many questions. It wasn't glamorous, but it was enough. Enough to send money home to Nigeria. Enough to keep a roof over her head in a cramped studio apartment in Gangnam. Enough to remind herself that she was strong, that she could make it on her own. She had skin the color of deep mahogany, rich and warm, and eyes that sparkled with determination even when she was exhausted. Her hair was always pulled back in a sleek bun, practical for work, and her smile, when she allowed herself to wear it, was bright enough to light up a room. But she didn't smile much anymore. Seoul was beautiful and brutal, and it had taught her that kindness was a luxury she couldn't always afford. That night, she'd been walking home after her shift, taking the usual shortcut through the back streets near Gangnam Station. It was late, past midnight, and the streets were mostly empty except for the occasional drunk businessman stumbling toward a taxi. She had her earbuds in, listening to Afrobeats to drown out the loneliness, and she almost didn't notice the black sedan parked in the alley ahead. Almost. But then she heard the voices, low, urgent, angry, and then the gunshot. Lena froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. She yanked out her earbuds and pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. Through the gap between 2 buildings, she saw them. 3 men in dark suits, standing over a body. One of them was wiping blood off a silver pistol with a handkerchief, his movements slow and methodical. Another was speaking into a phone, his voice too quiet for her to hear the words. And then the 3rd man turned. His face was illuminated by the glow of a streetlight, and for one terrible, frozen moment, his eyes locked onto hers. Lena ran. The next morning, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She went to work as usual, pouring coffee and taking orders. But every time the door opened, her heart jumped. She told herself she was being paranoid. Seoul was a city of 10 million people. The chances of anyone finding her were slim. But then he walked in, the man from the alley, the one with the dark eyes and the perfect coat. He moved through the restaurant like he owned it, his presence commanding attention without him having to say a word. He chose a table by the window, sat down with the kind of ease that suggested he'd never been uncomfortable a day in his life, and looked directly at her. Lena's hands trembled as she approached his table. Can I get you something?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "Americano," he said simply. "No sugar." She nodded and turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "You dropped this last night." Lena turned back slowly. He was holding something in his hand, a small silver bracelet, the one her mother had given her before she left Nigeria, the one she thought she'd lost weeks ago. "I didn't," she started, but her voice died in her throat. "You were running," he said again, leaning back in his chair. His tone was casual, conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. "You saw something you shouldn't have, and now you're afraid." Lena's pulse pounded in her ears. I don't know what you're talking about. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Lying doesn't suit you, Lena. The sound of her name on his lips sent a chill down her spine. How do you? I make it my business to know things, he said smoothly. He gestured to the seat across from him. Sit. I'm working. Sit, he repeated, and this time there was no mistaking the command in his voice. Lena sat. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. Then he said, My name is Kang Jae-hyun, and I have a proposition for you. I'm not interested, Lena said quickly. You haven't heard it yet. I don't need to. Whatever you're selling, I don't want it. Jae-hyun tilted his head slightly, amused. I'm not selling anything. I'm offering you a job. Lena blinked. A job. Yes, I need someone to manage my home. Cook, clean, organize, simple tasks. The pay is generous. More than you're making here. I promise you that. Why me? Lena asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Because you're capable, Jae-hyun said. And because you need the money. I have a job. You have 2 jobs, he corrected, and you're barely scraping by. I'm offering you a way out. Lena shook her head. I don't know you. I don't trust you. And I definitely don't want to work for someone who... She stopped herself, but the damage was done. Jaehyun's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Someone who what? Lena swallowed hard. Someone dangerous. Everyone in Seoul is dangerous, Jaehyun said quietly. The question is whether they're dangerous to you. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. I'm not. Come work for me, Lena. I promise. I won't touch you. You'll be safe with me. The words should have been comforting, but they weren't. Because the way he said them, the way his eyes lingered on her just a fraction too long, made her feel like she was already his. I'll think about it, Lena said, standing abruptly. You have until tomorrow, Jae-hyun said, and there was no negotiation in his tone. Lena didn't sleep that night. She lay in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in her mind. She should say no. She should run. She should get as far away from Kang Jae-hyun as possible. But then she thought about the stack of overdue bills on her kitchen counter. The rent she could barely afford. The money she'd promised to send home this month. The way her hands ached after every shift. The way her back screamed in protest when she climbed the stairs to her apartment. She thought about his promise. I won't touch you. You'll be safe with me. And against every instinct, every warning bell ringing in her head, Lena made her decision. The next day, she walked into the restaurant and found Jae-hyun waiting at the same table. He looked up when she approached, his expression calm, expectant. I'll do it, Lena said, but I have conditions. Name them. I work during the day, I go home at night, and if I ever feel unsafe, I leave. No questions asked. Jae-hyun considered this for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. And you keep your promise, Lena added, her voice firm. You don't touch me. Something dark and unreadable flickered across his face, but he smiled. I already gave you my word, Lena. I don't break my promises. Liar. Jae-hyun's home was nothing like Lena expected. It was a sprawling penthouse in the heart of Gangnam, all floor-to-ceiling windows and sleek, modern furniture. The view was breathtaking, Seoul stretched out below like a sea of lights. But there was something cold about the place, something sterile. It felt more like a museum than a home. This is where you'll be working, Jae-hyun said, leading her through the space. The kitchen is fully stocked. My bedroom is upstairs, off limits unless I ask you to clean it. There's a guest room down the hall where you can rest if you need to. Lena nodded, taking it all in. What exactly do you need me to do? Cook my meals, keep the place organized, answer the door when necessary. Simple things. That's it. That's it. It sounded too easy, and Lena had learned long ago that when something sounded too good to be true, it usually was. But she needed the money. So she stayed. The first week was uneventful. Lena cooked, cleaned, and stayed out of Jae-hyun's way. He was polite but distant, and true to his word, he never touched her. But she noticed things. The way men in dark suits came and went at odd hours. The hushed phone conversations in a language she didn't understand. The locked room at the end of the hall that she was explicitly told never to enter. And the way Jae-hyun looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention, like he was solving a puzzle, like she was something he wanted to keep. One evening, Lena was preparing dinner when Jae-hyun walked into the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, watching her work. You're good at this, he said. At cooking? At pretending everything's normal? Lena's hands stilled. What do you mean? You're scared of me, Jae-hyun said, his tone matter of fact. But you're pretending you're not. Why? Because I need this job, Lena said honestly. And if you didn't? She looked at him then, really looked at him. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here. Jaehyun smiled, but it was a sad, bitter thing. At least you're honest. You want honesty? Lena said, turning to face him fully. Fine. I don't know who you are, but I know you're dangerous. I know you're hiding something. And I know that whatever you're involved in, it's going to get someone killed. Someone already has, Jaehyun said quietly. The air between them went still. Then why am I here? Lena whispered. Jaehyun stepped closer, and for the first time, she saw something raw in his eyes. Something almost vulnerable, because you're the only person in this city who isn't afraid to tell me the truth. And before she could respond, he turned and walked away. It started with small things. A hand on her shoulder when she stumbled. A steadying grip on her waist when she reached for something on a high shelf. Moments that lasted just a fraction too long, where his touch lingered and his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. You promised, Lena said one night, pulling away from him after he'd steadied her with both hands on her arms. I did, Jaehyun agreed, and I'm keeping it. This doesn't feel like keeping it. I haven't touched you, he said, his voice low. Not the way you think I will. Then what are you doing? Jaehyun stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat radiating off his body. I'm reminding myself why I can't. Lena's heart pounded. You're confusing me. Good, Jaehyun said, and there was something dark and dangerous in his smile. Because you've been confusing me since the moment I met you. 2 weeks into the job, Lena started noticing the man outside. He was always there, across the street, watching the building. Always in the same black jacket, always smoking a cigarette. At first, she thought she was being paranoid. But then she saw him again, and again. She told Jaehyun. His reaction was immediate and terrifying. His calm demeanor shattered, replaced by something cold and lethal. He made a phone call, his voice sharp and commanding, and within minutes, 3 men in suits arrived at the penthouse. Stay inside, Jaehyun told her, his tone leaving no room for argument. Don't go near the windows. Don't open the door for anyone. What's happening? Lena asked, fear creeping into her voice. Someone knows you're here, Jaehyun said. And that's a problem. Why? I'm just your housekeeper. You're not just anything, Jaehyun snapped, and the intensity in his eyes made her flinch. He softened immediately, reaching out as if to touch her, then stopping himself. Just stay here. Trust me. And then he was gone. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She paced the penthouse, her mind racing. Someone knew she was here. Someone was watching. And Jaehyun's reaction had been too extreme for this to be about a simple housekeeper. She found herself standing outside the locked room at the end of the hall, the one she'd been told never to enter. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. Don't, a voice in her head whispered. Don't do this. But she had to know. The door wasn't locked. It swung open silently, and Lena stepped inside. The room was an office. A desk, a computer, file cabinets lining the walls. And on the desk, a folder. Her name was written on the tab in neat, precise handwriting. Lena's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were photos of her, dozens of them, walking to work, leaving her apartment, sitting at a cafe, and older ones too, ones from the night she'd seen the murder. There was a police report, heavily redacted, a list of names she didn't recognize, and at the bottom, a note in Jaehyun's handwriting, witness, liability, priority containment. Lena's blood ran cold. He'd known. From the very beginning, he'd known. And he'd brought her here not to protect her, but to control her. The door clicked shut behind her. She spun around. Jaehyun stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I told you not to come in here. You've been watching me, Lena whispered, her voice shaking. This whole time, you've been. Keeping you safe, Jaehyun said, stepping into the room. Safe? Lena's voice rose, sharp with betrayal. You manipulated me. You lied to me. Her voice broke. Why? Because you saw something you shouldn't have, Jaehyun said, his tone infuriatingly calm. And the people who did it don't leave witnesses. Then why didn't you just... She couldn't finish the sentence. Kill you? Jaehyun said, and there was something almost sad in his voice. Because I couldn't. Lena stared at him, tears streaming down her face. I trusted you. I know. You promised. I promised I wouldn't touch you, Jaehyun said, stepping closer. And I haven't, but I never promised I'd let you go. The next morning, everything changed. Lena tried to leave, but the penthouse was locked down. Guards at every exit. Jaehyun's orders. I'm not your prisoner, Lena said, her voice shaking with fury. No, Jaehyun agreed. But you're not safe out there either. The people who killed that man, They know about you now, and they'll do anything to make sure you don't talk. Then let me go to the police. The police won't help you, Jaehyun said sharply. Half of them are on payroll. The other half won't touch this case. You go to them, and you're as good as dead. Lena felt the walls closing in. Then what do you want from me? Jaehyun's jaw tightened. I want you to stay alive. Why? Lena demanded. Why do you even care? For a long moment, Jaehyun said nothing. Then quietly, almost too quiet to hear, he said, Because I'm tired of watching people die. Days passed in tense silence. Lena stopped trying to leave. She stayed in the guest room, avoiding Jaehyun as much as possible. But the penthouse felt smaller every day, the air heavier, suffocating. And then one night, she overheard a conversation. Jaehyun was on the phone, his voice low and clipped. Lena pressed her ear to the door, her heart pounding. She doesn't know anything, Jaehyun was saying. She's not a threat. A pause. No, I'm handling it. She stays with me until this blows over. Another pause. Longer this time. I said I'm handling it, Jaehyun snapped. She's mine, and no one touches what's mine. Lena's stomach dropped. She's mine. Not she's safe. Not she's innocent. She's mine. The rival gang came 3 days later. Lena was in the kitchen when she heard the gunfire. She dropped the knife she'd been holding, her body freezing in terror. Shouts echoed through the penthouse, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Jaehyun burst into the kitchen, blood on his shirt, his eyes wild. We need to go. Now. What's happening? They're here for you, Jaehyun said, grabbing her arm. We don't have time. The door exploded inward. 3 men stormed in, guns raised. Jaehyun shoved Lena behind him, drawing his own weapon in one smooth motion. The room erupted in chaos. Gunfire, screaming, the acrid smell of smoke, and then everything went black. When Lena woke, she was in the back of a moving van. Her hands were tied, her head pounding. Across from her sat a man she didn't recognize, his smile cold and cruel. Welcome back, he said. Kang Jaehyun sends his regards. Lena's blood turned to ice. What? You really thought he cared about you? The man laughed. He sold you out, sweetheart, made a deal to save his own skin. You were always just a pawn. No, Lena whispered, but even as she said it, she remembered Jaehyun's words on the phone. She's mine. Not I'll protect her. She's mine. The van came to a stop. The man leaned forward, his smile widening. Don't worry, you won't be alive long enough to feel betrayed. The doors opened, and rough hands dragged her out into the night. And that was the moment everything fell apart. Part 1 ends here. Should we continue this story? If you want part 2, comment below. I want part 2. And tell us, what are you expecting to happen next? What do you think Lena will do? And will Jaehyun save her or betray her again? Drop your theories in the comments. Let's see who can predict what happens next. See you in part 2. If you're brave enough to come back.